Have you ever wondered why the online adult content is free and that you can scroll endlessly and find such crazy amount of content? Well, the truth is it's costing you a lot more than you even realize. In today's video, we're going to break down how it can literally destroy your life. Now, I've gone over 500 plus days on NoFap and even cured my own corn-induced ED. And today we're going to break down exactly what you're paying in return for watching corn. Now, number one, you're paying with your soul. Now, it's hard for a lot of people to listen to this, right, and say, how could I pay for it with my soul? It's literally free, right? But what a lot of times people don't realize is that, number one, the time, energy, and attention that you put towards all this is literally all you have in this lifetime, right? You're here for a limited amount of time on this earth. And if you're going to spend your time, jerking the chicken to online content and think that's going to get you a good ROI in life, you are mistaken, right? And you know this because anytime are in a position and you're in a place where, if it's just, you don't feel good after. You do not feel good. You don't feel like a man, right? You feel ashamed of yourself, embarrassed, right? And the thing is, corn is really the modern day cigarette of today's society, right? It's a thing that people know is bad for them, but will continue to do it. And of course, has a stigma associated with it, which is why a lot of people refuse to talk about it. And then also, right, all the downsides that come with consuming that, right? You have all the dysfunctions, the ED that can arise, right? You see all the men nowadays, they need honey packs, right? To even be able to perform. And we got to ask ourselves, is this normal, right? And the answer is no, absolutely not, right? But you're paying for this with your future, right? And we have to think about it. A lot of times men are put through difficult situations, not to necessarily get to some end destination, but it's to change and become a different type of person, right? Become the version of you that you need to be. And it's interesting, I was listening to a video where they were talking about, and I had talked about this previously as well, where there was a kid and he went on this journey. He saw a dream, and in his dream, it showed these jewels and this treasure. And he went on this long adventure trying to find the treasure and look all these different places in the world. And where he ended up going through a lot of trials and tribulations, almost got killed. But at the end of the day, what happened is he ended up finding the treasure. He went all across the globe, and the treasure all along was right beneath him. Where he lived, it was, I believe, underground. And the moral of the story was who the kid became, right? And the trials and tribulations that turned him into, a man who would go through all these things to reach that end destination. And he was satisfied, and he was on his deathbed and realizing that this was his last moment, but he was satisfied because, he did all of these things trying to find this hidden treasure when he realized, it was really, life is about the journey. And I think that's very similar to a lot of men nowadays, where going through this cycle, right, of you, trying to quit the corn. And actually, you know what? We don't even try. Let's erase that from the vocab. Quitting the corn, right? Going through those trials and tribulations will allow you to become the version of yourself that you always imagined and dreamed of. Think about it, right? If the majority of men, right, struggle with a certain habit, some it's drinking, right? Some it's puffing on something, right? It's all of these different struggles. What type of man do you have to become to actually overcome that type of stuff, right? In the level, right, in the discipline and the focus, the intention, all of those things, you have to dial them up towards 100, right? To be able to overcome your negative habits, right? And literally becoming that version, that can overcome these type of habits. That's literally going to transform you, and you're going to become the greatest version of yourself, right? And I had talked about this as well, right? And it's this idea of alchemy. And alchemy is basically where people, they combine metals, different types of metals to create a stronger, combo of a metal. And the other side of alchemy that, maybe some of you have heard of is that, it's the alchemy of self, right? How can I use these experiences and what I tell myself and what I believe about life to transform myself into someone else, right? We all have goals, but what we really need to look at and is say, okay, if this is my goal, am I the type of person necessary to achieve my goal, right? And if you're a guy watching this, you probably have some inkling of wanting to improve, right? At the base foundation, it's quitting corn, curing the ED, right? Performing better, consistent performance, confidence, no performance anxiety, right? All of those things. But if these are your goals, what type of person do you need to become, right? I know even, and if you're enjoying this video and getting value from it, please hit the like button. But I know personally in my own journey, right, I had to go through certain things. Right, and at the end of the day, the best outcome, right, is for you to quit the corn. But what you want to do in the most basic fundamental way is reduce your consumption as much as possible, right? And I remember even throughout my own journey where I had to go through certain trials and tribulations that turned me into someone completely different. And even if you look at me now, right, I'm in pretty good shape, right? Pretty good shape, skin is not too bad, fresh haircut, all of those things, right? The presentation is on point, right? But I had to go through certain things to become this version of myself, right? And it took a lot of pain. And that's really what you have to go through, right? Because the combination of experiences to get you to that new level, it's going to be painful, right? And this process, right, of becoming this version of you is going to take time, and it's not going to be fun, right? I know personally, right? Sure, I had situations where, like I always say, the corn got in the way of potential relationships, long-term partners, right? Struggling with ED and all that stuff. And literally, right, it caused me to turn up my life a notch to where, all right, if I'm struggling with this problem, if I don't solve this, it's gonna be game over, right? I'm not gonna be happy in life, right? I'm just struggling, right? I'm not where I want to be. What do I need to do to actually fix my life and become that version of myself, right? And through that pain and, through the retention, right? Going on these long streaks, 100+ days, right? And I'm talking about retention. I'm not talking about no fap. I'm talking about retention, 100+ days. Literally, I was transforming into a different version of myself. And sometimes I look back on some of the work that I did during that time period where, I was frustrated, right? My performance really wasn't where I wanted it to be. I was struggling, right? The corn was in the way. I had a lot of issues, right? And I took that energy, right? I took my seed and basically was able to take that and become a different version. Use that energy and transmute that energy into business, right? And into fitness. And that's what this is. That's all this is, right? It's taking what I had and transmuting it into the work, right? And I remember, I've had other YouTube channels in the past where I was posting every day. Every single day I was posting. I was sitting down thinking, man, how can I put out another video? What can I do to be successful? How can I get in better shape? And I was in pain a lot of the time, right? And I was using that pain to fuel me. I was like, man, I had a situation, right, where a girl had ghosted me. And I was like, how could she ghost me, right? Me, like, and it hurt my ego. But through, those situations, it fortified a different version of me to where, I looked at the situation and I'm like, I'm going to use this as fuel to turn things up even further of a notch, right? And those guys who deal with ED or these different dysfunctions, right, from the corn, if you think about it, this obstacle is literally an opportunity to become that version of you that's literally unstoppable, right? And that pain, right? And a lot of guys have gone through it, right? Where maybe you can't get it up or you can't perform. She leaves, you feel embarrassed. It's what you do in that moment when she leaves that defines who you are, right? Am I gonna do the same things over and over again and expect a different result? Or am I going to turn things up a notch, right? Turn them up a notch and say, I'm gonna use this, right? I'm gonna get in shape, right? To where I'm gonna have women coming up to me, right? Getting in shape, reading, meditating, doing those daily habits that you know are gonna get you to the next level. And especially someone who's struggling with ED, eating the right type of foods is another huge discipline, right? Because it's one thing to work out consistently, right? Get in the gym. But if you're eating the proper foods, you're on a whole nother level, right? Because what you eat and your desires as a man, right? Those desires to reproduce are literally the two hardest things to control in this lifetime. All right, and if you can control these two things and understand that and transmute that energy, right? And it's tough because, a lot of you, once you go a couple of days, right, you end up relapsing and that's all she wrote. Right? But if you're able to go those longer days, you'll know what I'm talking about, where, you feel your skin kind of clear up and you feel the energy within you, right? It's like you have to work out. You don't even think about not going to the gym. It's just automatic. Like, all right, I'm going to the gym. And your workouts are more intense. Like you're pushing the weight and it's you feel every pump, right? And then you're outside and maybe you see an attractive, woman and you feel that desire to go after her, right? You feel that masculine energy that all men have at some level or another, right? But you got to understand, when you watch Korn, right, and Relapse and PMO, you're sacrificing all of that. You're sacrificing the time, energy, and attention you had to build a better future for yourself and even your family, right? If you're able to get one, right? Because in order for you to even get a family, right, you have to be the version of yourself necessary to attract a high quality partner that you want, right? So how are you going to do that if you're watching Korn? And think about it, right? Just in her position, are you going to want to date someone who's watching Korn? And some people call it cheating, some people don't. But at the end of the day, is that something you really think a girl is going to want to be in a relationship with you over? You know the answer to that at the end of the day, right? But you're coping, right? And just because society does something and makes it normal doesn't mean it's normalized, right? And they're really profiting off of you. So you're going to take your most valuable resources and waste them. And not only waste them, you get nothing in return after you PMO. You feel worse about yourself. And you've also gone even farther away from just emotionally connecting with women as well, right? Because the more Korn you end up watching, right, it's just harder to bond, right, with someone else if your dopamine requirement is so high. So at the end of the day, you have to make a choice, right? You can continue to give up your future partner, that physique that you want, right? The children maybe that you want, right? Maybe the lifestyle that you want. You're giving up all that for a momentary pleasure. You have to realize and you have to take action or else nothing will change. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please like the video.